Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this clown decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. And today I am once again having to defend Farage and Reform against fake news, this time from multiple angles, because for some reason the online writers all of a sudden started believing fake news, and not reading beyond the headline, which is supposed to sensationalise, and frankly at this point, because the mainstream are actually now realising that Farage actually has quite a high likelihood of becoming PM, whether that's through the Tories or Reform, we don't know yet. But either way, they are clearly scared. They are going on the attack on him. And for some reason, a lot of the online right are deciding that they are going to support that attack. But we'll get into all that. First, let's just get into the detail. The Guardian's political editor, Pippa Crerar, said a dozen Reform UK councillors have given notice of their intention to resign en masse in protest at Nigel Farage's leadership, Ben Quinn reports. Oh no, this sounds bad. This sounds like Reform are in total turmoil, despite the fact that they now have more members than the Tories, and the membership is still going up, and they're still going up in the polls to the point where in one national poll they were joint lead. What are they going to do? Well, their stated reasons for leaving are completely moronic. In a statement seen by The Guardian, they said they could not continue in good conscience under the leadership of Farage, adding, "We believe that the current party management is either incompetent or malevolent, and we have lost all confidence in the leadership and its structure." You're going to have to go into detail on that, my guy. They cited a lack of internal democracy. Okay, well this is how they are idiots then. I have literally covered this topic in a video on my channel. Anyone who cites Reform isn't democratic enough as a reason for leaving Reform are just bad actors. They are simply bad actors. So that already set off alarm bells in my head when I read this. Effectively they seem to be Ben Habib simps, and frankly Ben Habib simps are also people who are just following a snake. Effectively what happened to Ben Habib is that he was demoted from deputy leader because he didn't win his seat in the election, and obviously Farage needs someone in Parliament who is going to be deputy leader so that they can take on his role when he's outside of Parliament. That just makes sense. And Ben Habib, for some reason, took this badly, even though it's the most sensible thing I can think of, and has effectively acted like a scorned ex-girlfriend ever since, continuing the lie that it's not a democratic party, despite the fact that the members voted on a new constitution that literally says that if half the membership wants Farage ousted, they can write in letters of no confidence to the board, who can then approve the no confidence motion, which is literally more democratic than either the Tories or Labour, who can only oust a leader through their MPs. So yeah, I'm not taking this, it's not democratic anymore. It's a complete lie. Anyone who listens to Ben Habib needs to realise that he's actually a snake, and that you just sound like idiots to anyone who pays attention to this. And these councillors are clearly in that box too. But there's more to this story, so let's carry on. They claimed that the new constitution adopted by the party in its annual conference was flawed, and that there had been no progress towards a promise by Farage to democratise reform. Yet these are all just Ben Habib talking points, as I just went through. They're all nonsense. You can see the other video link in the description if you want the details. The councillors, which was set up as a company in which he holds a controlling stake. Yeah, it's irrelevant that. Councillors backed the Farage critic and former deputy leader Ben Habib. Wow, how did I know that he was going to come up? Whom they said had been unceremoniously dumped. No, he hadn't. He didn't win a seat. Therefore, how can he possibly carry on as deputy leader? Again, he wasn't the only one who was quote-unquote unceremoniously dumped. So was Dr. David Bull. And guess what? He's still in Reform and being an activist for them. You can have humility, Ben. And was the man who truly represented the vision and values that drew us to Reform UK. Well, because he's going on about demographics, and because he's going on about the Constitution needing to be democratised. Don't make me laugh. It's a nonsense. All this is an attack on Farage. And you might be asking, well, why are Reform UK councillors having a go at Farage? Well, you've got to realise that Reform were pretty much happy for anyone to defect to Reform, and, well, as we'll get into, these people actually probably from the very start were waiting for a time like this to attack Reform. But yes, this is pretty much their issues with Reform apparently. It's not democratic enough, which, as I've gone through, is just nonsense, and they seem to like Ben Habib, which, if that doesn't show that they're lolcows, I don't know what would. Anyway, Reform were pretty no-nonsense on this, and Zaya Yusuf got on this straight away. This is dishonest from The Guardian. They failed to publish Nigel Farage's full statement to them. The leader of this group of councillors was suspended weeks ago by Reform for nominating candidates that failed vetting and for fraudulently nominating candidates with invalid DNO certificates, which is a delegated nominating officer certificate, effectively a nomination form. And so, as a result of that, these councillors are illegitimate and the new election must be held. Reform stands for the highest standards in public life, and those who commit fraud will be expelled. And yet, this is clearly this is why this is all happening. So they are effectively councillors who are jumping before they are inevitably going to be shoved. And on their exit, they are finding the weakest attacks on Reform that I think I can find. If your issue with Reform is that it is not democratic enough, when I've never known that to be an issue with Reform. I mean, also, it's something that you should probably be aware of before joining Reform. Can I actually oust Nigel Farage? Oh, it turns out it's not that easy. Oh, well, it's still easier than the Tories and Labour, wow. If you're literally going into Reform and saying, oh, the way to kick Farage out isn't good enough, I want to kick him out, you're probably not there as an honest actor in the first place anyway. And that's not me saying, oh, they shouldn't work to democratise the party. They already are doing it, so I've got no problem with them. But anyone who says they're not democratising is just a dishonest actor, as I say. But also, if at the same time your main complaint is, oh, Farage is leader, why did you join Reform? Why are you under the impression that his leadership's going to change? He became leader less than a year ago. What's wrong with you? Anyway, Zaya made sure to confirm this on Twitter by showing the world the email that was sent to the councillors to let them know that they are going to get the sack and that they have been kicked out of Reform. So he had his receipts and what have you, and then obviously Lee Anderson also chimes in, calling the Guardian tin pot journalists who are scared to death of Reform UK. And to be quite honest with you, from the mainstream media, that is the feeling I'm getting. Because the lies today have just been ridiculous. Well, yesterday, technically. They will print anything to appease their pearl-clutching, namby-pamby, avocado-eating readership. I would read the rest of that out, but you get the idea. Our membership soars, and it did reach 180,000 today, so yes, the membership is still going up, and we will take our country back. Honestly, it appears that the more Reform and Farage and any of the other MPs are lied about, the more popular they get. Anyway, the main point of this video and what we are talking about, as you saw in the thumbnail, Shamima Begum has been brought up, all comes from comments Deputy Assistant to Donald Trump said the other day, Sebastian Gorka. So Britain must bring back UK members of Islamic State held in Syrian prison camps as the price of the special relationship with the US. In an interview with The Times, Sebastian Gorka said the UK government must honour its commitment to the international fight against ISIS by taking back dozens of Britons in limbo in northeast Syria. This includes, according to the US, Shamima Begum, who left for Syria from Benthall Green, East London, as a schoolgirl in 2015 and obviously lost her final appeal last year against the rescinding of her British citizenship, which was the correct choice, by the way. And the direct quote is, "Any nation which wishes to be seen as a serious ally and friend of the most powerful nation in the world should act in a fashion that reflects that serious commitment. This is doubly so for the UK, which has a very special place in President Trump's heart, and we would all wish to see the special relationship fully re-established." Now, you may be wondering why Trump's pick for incoming Director of Counter-Terrorism said that the UK should repatriate terrorists. And the reason is actually not that far-fetched. And it's, to be honest, it's reasoning that has been quite common in the right wing since about 2014. Effectively, what the reasoning is that we should repatriate British terrorists to incarcerate them in our own jails forever, effectively to keep a closer eye on them. Now, while this list did include Shamima Begum, obviously the reason Shamima Begum should never come back is because she does not have UK citizenship anymore, so she shouldn't be repatriated because she is not ours, and that was the correct decision to make. And before I get into the next part, I want to make it clear that there appears to be absolutely nobody in the UK who wants to try and say, let's bring her back then, and I do mean that. I do include everyone in Reform. I even include a lot of people at the top brass of Labour, amazingly. So let's go forward with that in mind. Because ITV News posted this tweet out and it broke everybody's mind. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage tells some journalist at ITV the UK government should consider allowing Shamima Begum back home. Shall we read what he actually said? Because this is a case of some of the worst fake news I think I've seen in 2025 already. So Farage said, "I never wanted to bring Shamima Begum back. I've instinctively never wanted to, but now I'm thoughtful. I'm thoughtful. I don't classify her as ISIS as in an all-out ISIS killer, which is fair to say because she was an enforcer throughout the individual internal ISIS camps rather than someone who was, say, killing Western soldiers who were fighting ISIS. She's sort of less. She's a lesser part of the equation. So this is the point where Farage is no longer really talking about Shamima Begum, who, as he said, the whole point here is that I never wanted to bring her back, and I never wanted to bring pretty much anyone back. But at this point, he's no longer talking about Shamima Begum. This is a lesser part of the equation. That's an individual case. Let's talk about the rest of the terrorists that they're saying, because it's something like 40 people they want repatriated here. He carries on to say, it's very difficult for us to think we should take people back, Shamima Begum and others, and instinctively it's not something I want to do. Again, very clear, he doesn't want to do this. He is on the position of no ISIS members should be repatriated to Britain. However, he does appreciate the argument that Gorka is making, because he argues that if we and other European countries don't take back these people and put them in prison here, they will get out of prison under the new Syrian regime, leading to a problem that in the end we may all have to fight. And again, this is stuff that was said by G.K. Rees-Mogg years ago, this was said by the general right wing years ago, even the online right thought that this idea wasn't too bad. That if we have the prison space and the capacity to put them in maximum security prisons, or hell, let's be fair, the right wing would probably say bring them back to, frankly, put them to the death penalty, which again, I'm fine with, then that might be better for them to go off to some cave somewhere in the Middle East to recreate ISIS and start terrorist attacks again. The logic makes perfectly good sense. It's just, as Nigel Farage has clearly said here, along with, as we will go through, everyone else in the UK, Shamima Begum specifically has lost her citizenship, so she shouldn't come back. And that is what Farage is saying here. He's just saying, listen, there's another side to the argument here that isn't complete nonsense. And he's basically said he doesn't agree with it. And then after being directly asked, should we let Shamima Begum back, he says, I think what Gorka has done is started a debate, not one that I wanted to have and not one that the British government wanted to have, but now we're going to have to. And when asked does he have a point, Farage says, regrettably, yes, he does have a point. I don't see anything wrong with anything said here. Farage is not advocating we bring Shamima Begum back. Farage is saying, there's another side to this debate that we can't ignore. We are on one side of the debate. We need to come up with better arguments to beat that side of the debate that, let's face it, isn't fully terrible. That's what is being said here. And unfortunately, everyone took the ITV headline and ran. You had the top Tory brass trying to effectively virtue signal, saying, oh, we're never going to have Shamima Begum back, as if, again, they read anything beyond the headline. I mean, again, this is fine virtue signalling. Yes, Shamima Begum should never come back. Robert Jenrick saying, no, we shouldn't. I'm perfectly fine with this. I want to be clear. It's just realistically, the reply we should be giving to Robert Jenrick as online activists is, well, that's good, because Nigel Farage actually agrees and ITV posted fake news. Kemi Badenoch also chimed in saying, a Conservative government led by me will never take back terrorists like Shamima Begum, who have been stripped of their citizenship. And again, as far as I'm aware, even in that speech, in that interview that Nigel Farage gave, he never said anything different. Actions must have consequences, there is no deterrent. Again, Nigel Farage and Reform agree. Citizenship means committing to a country and wanting its success. Yes, it's not an international travel document for crime tourism. Again, I call this virtue signalling. It is. It's totally fine. I totally agree with all of it. It's just, as I say, as online activists, as long with saying, yes, we agree with that, it should be pointed out that Nigel Farage also agreed with that. But as I say, an awful lot of people just take a headline and run. And even then, this fake news made it all the way to the top brass of Labour, where an official statement was made to the media where they had to reinstate that Shamima Begum is not coming back to the UK. Foreign Secretary David Laming said, we will not be bringing her back to the UK. We're really clear about that because obviously it's gone through all the courts and she's lost her citizenship. Again, this is all good news. This is all good to hear. It's just, as I have to say again, this all got into the news, not necessarily because of what Sebastian Gorka said. It's because of that ITV News headline. So it's good to see that everyone agrees Shamima Begum shouldn't come back. Don't get me wrong, but let's not be out here pretending that Nigel Farage does want her back, because that's not what he said. Anyway, the crabs in the proverbial right-wing bucket were all out trying to drag Farage down because, once again, of a headline. Scorned ex-girlfriend of Reform, Ben Habib, was saying, oh, even Sajid Javid recognised she must never foot on British soil. Again, he didn't read past the headline, they're just running with it. I get really fed up with the right wing battering down Farage for things he didn't say, but every time there's fake news about him, I'm going to be making a video explaining that you're all idiots, and I'm going to be very smug about it. It's amazing that even Elon Musk was replying, basically agreeing with Ben's sentiment, which is perfectly fine, by the way. It's just what I find very funny is that it's someone else in Trump's team that was suggesting this, that again, Nigel Farage was saying he disagrees with. But again, no one's read past this headline. Lawrence Fox, leader of Reclaim, if that's a party that's still going, also got in on the bandwagon. Let's invite a deceased terrorist husband's family too, shall we? This is what happens when they grant you a seat at a grown-ups table. Excuse me, Mr. Fox. Reform leader Farage repeats the headline, and he didn't read past it again. It's incredible. But yes, these people don't bother to read past the headline. They just do not like Mr. Farage. You may be wondering why, but I'm going to get to my Artusi at the end and then bring this whole network that all these people are, frankly, loosely a part of together to explain why this is effectively happening. And yes, it goes right along with my crabs in a bucket theory. But Lawrence Fox also clearly has the attention span of Hunter Biden, probably because he does as many drugs as him, hence he was so good at acting as him in that film nobody watched. But he was also singing the praises of Kemi Badenoch, saying leadership. As if saying the basic thing everyone is saying, including Nigel Farage and Reform, as saying on Shamima Begum, is leadership. I mean, I get this is supposed to be a joke, but my god. These people, as I say, they are just crabs trying to pull down Nigel Farage and Reform with them. Why? Because they've been kicked out the club. Why have they been kicked out the club? Because they are liabilities. Anyway, the final right-wing grifter I'm going to go through quickly is Tommy Robinson, who one of his admins has had to post this because he's in prison for absolutely nothing to do with the grooming gangs. He said, "No, we should not. I'm quite sure this matter was dealt with. Why say this?" Well, it's because he didn't say this. Once again, whoever your admin is, Tommy Robinson, they need to read beyond the headline. Why are all these people who say, don't trust the mainstream news, don't trust the mainstream media, they give you catchy headlines that always lie, why all of a sudden do they believe catchy headlines that is clearly a lie? Because it's attacking Nigel Farage. They will go against these basic rules that we all have just to attack the man. Because the man wants nothing to do with them, because they are all liabilities. Yes, that definitely includes Tommy Robinson. In fact, he's probably one of the worst. But luckily there was some hope with the online right. Josh Fern of the Load Seats actually came out and said, to be fair to Farage, he said the opposite of what ITV is claiming he said here. Which is just true. How does he know this? Because of my activism online pointing out that it's all fake news. You can see the source below here. Which it was. It's the same thing that I pointed out here. He says, yes, instinctively I don't want her back. She shouldn't come back. Gorka has a point. We should probably have a debate about it and confirm that this is the right thing to do. Instinctively, I'm on this side. Let's get the arguments together for it. That's all he's saying. And people seem to think that this means that he's on the fence about it. It's not true at all. He's effectively saying, don't rest on your laurels. It's very, very simple. I nearly said, and even Josh get it, but Josh isn't an idiot, so of course Josh got it, but you get the point. Things like this show the difference between people who actually have a critical brain and people who just go along with anything. And as it turns out, Lawrence Fox, he goes along with anything. And I've not even got onto my Artusi yet, who seems to have just turned into a sensationalist moron. But as I say, I'm saving him for his own section at the end, because I find it incredible how stupid he's been about this whole situation. But anyway, first of all, let's see what Zaya Yusuf's initial reaction was to being asked about this ridiculous headline.
If anyone actually cares about truth, then they should actually look what Nigel actually said.
Well, precisely, hence I'm making this video to correct the record from all these morons.
Which was that what's happened in Syria is that there's been regime change. And let's be clear about what's happened as a result of that. You have jihadists in senior government positions. If you are a British citizen and you are concerned that there are people in Syrian prisons that are security threats to the United Kingdom, where would you rather they were sitting? Inside a prison in a now potentially jihadist-controlled Syria, or inside a maximum security prison inside the United Kingdom?
Yeah, and to add on to that, the current position that an awful lot of people in the UK have is obviously she should stay out there because she's not our problem anymore because she doesn't have citizenship. Perfectly reasonable. Now, did he make that entirely clear, or was that more of a subtext? It was more of a subtext, and you want to criticise Farage on this? I agree. He should have made that more blatant. I'm totally on board with that. But he specifically asked about, effectively, what do you think of this debate? And his answer was, well, I'm on this side of it, but it's a fair point. I think we should make better arguments to clarify and defend our position. That's all he said. That is all Zaya Yusuf is pointing out, that there are good points for the other side of bringing terrorists home to lock them up away forever in our own prisons. It was a common question being asked not even 5 years ago on the right wing, and for some reason everyone's just forgotten about it because they want to pull Nigel Farage down. It's incredible. And then Zaya Yusuf goes on to make another good point about why this is all happening.
And that's what the point Nigel was making. This is really important. One of the key points is that we've had governments now, 14 years of Tory rule, and now this awful Labour government, where politicians pretend to care about British people and will say the words that they think are going to maximise their outcomes on social media and government and media headlines. Nigel Farage is the opposite.
Yeah, great point. What are all these politicians doing? I mean, Jenrick, I believe, actually sincerely holds this position. Kemi just says whatever she thinks is expedient at the time. David Lammy's just saying whatever the law said, basically. But this is his point. Clearly things are moving to the right, and so he's making the point that, well, the rhetoric from all these politicians that caused all these problems, okay, they dealt well with Shamima Begum, let's be fair there, but they will just say whatever rhetoric they think will get them votes. With Nigel Farage, as the point is made by the ITV interview, which we'll get into in a sec, clearly he's not the type of person to just land on a position and then take it for granted. No, he will say, listen, I've heard a good point from the other side. I still want to hold this position, but we need to come up with good arguments to keep it. And again, as I want to make clear from the interview, he wasn't just talking about Shamima Begum. On her, keep her there. For other people whose citizenship has not necessarily been stripped, it's a bit of a difficult question, especially if they're not a dual national and we can't rescind British citizenship. There's a difficult question there. And that's what he wanted to focus on more. Again, did he make that clear in the interview? No, I'm perfectly fine with saying he didn't make these points entirely clear, and it did open him to attack from this. That is perfectly legitimate criticism. The rest of the stuff saying he wants Shamima Begum back, total nonsense. It's a farce. It's to the point where Nigel Farage clarified his position, saying that he has never wanted to allow Shamima Begum back in Britain, as he literally says in the interview, as I have pointed out. And as anyone who bothered to read beyond the headline would know, I'm instinctively against this. I don't want this. I don't even want to have this debate, but we're probably going to have it because it's a good point. That's all he said. People are losing their minds because they want Nigel Farage out, and it's pathetic. Who do you expect to take over and do as well as Nigel Farage, honestly? This is a genuine problem that the right wing have. Farage is our guy. A lot of people don't like him because he's not a deity and not perfect. People like me understand that he makes mistakes and are willing to be charitable with him, because at the end of the day, if not him, who else? What, Robert Jenrick? Yeah, maybe. Unfortunately, he seems to be sticking to the Tories, and trust me, I'm at a point where I'm struggling to say, yeah, I can trust to vote the Tories again. So if I'm saying it, imagine the millions of others of people saying it. Oh, Homeland, well, they're not even fielding parliamentary candidates, so good luck there. Oh, UKIP. Who even knows who UKIP are anymore? Who's leading UKIP? Nobody knows. They've not made a name for themselves. Like Reform, we're managing to kind of do before Farage officially came back to politics, by the way. People forget Richard Tice was leading that party on about 8%. That's really not bad for a alternative party, really. Okay, they weren't winning seats, but that's because the support was spread out throughout Britain. Now Farage is back, that support's raised so much that they got 5 MPs a few months into Farage leading it. And now they're joint first in some polls. Let's be realistic. Why is this attack happening from ITV? Because Farage and Reform are actually doing really well, and instead of supporting them, you have these morons saying, no, they suck, it needs to change, it needs to be Ben Habib, maybe even Rupert Lowe in charge. And I just have to ask these people, do you know anyone in real life who knows these people? Or is it just people online who are in these echo chambers saying Rupert Lowe's great? And I agree he's great. I agree he's a good MP. He's not necessarily a good leader. It's a completely different skill set when it comes to leading a political party to being an MP and being a businessman. Farage has honed his skills over literal decades and got it to a point where he has literally launched this alternative party from 8% to 20-odd%. Consistently 20 odd percent. Imagine what that's going to look like in 4 years' time at the next election. Let's be real here. There's criticisms of Farage. I totally get it. I make them myself. I've made them in this very video. Let's not take a lying football from ITV and run with it. It makes you look like complete fools and completely undermines the right-wing movements. You're not helpful. You're trying to throw all your toys out the pram because you can't be the one pushing the pram. Laurence Fox is a great example. You're the leader of your own party and you're getting nowhere, so you whinge and whine about the leader of an actual successful one. You sit on the fence, waiting to see which way the wind blows. Total nonsense. Nigel Farage has been at the forefront of an awful lot of right-wing issues over the past decades. Brexit, pretty much put forward by UKIP. Guess who was part of UKIP? Nigel Farage. Guess who was leading UKIP? Throughout the Brexit vote, Nigel Farage. What were you doing the whole time, Laurence Fox? You were acting in Lewis and getting high off cocaine. You have one decent run on Question Time, people are willing to give you goodwill, and now people either forgot who you were or think you're mental. How about you wind your neck in for a bit and actually work out how you can be useful again? Anyway, after literally 4 hours of this nonsense, releasing this clip, by the way, at 11:15 at night in the UK, ITV finally decide that they're actually going to show us the clip. You know, show us something beyond the headline on Twitter that isn't a total lie. Yeah, let's watch this full exchange, because again, you go through this clip, and I just don't see it as unreasonable.
He suggested that Britain should think about bringing back some UK members of Islamic State from Syria to the UK. Is he right?
I find it very difficult. You know, I mean, Seb is a friend, as indeed half the cabinet are. I've known him a long, long time. I've got great respect for him. I think you do a great job.
I mean, already, Farage, after saying that, is going to have a hard time saying a dead, no, he's an idiot. Because, frankly, again, the question isn't unreasonable. What is better? Letting terrorists out free in the rest of the world where they can make insurgent cells, make their way into our open borders in Europe to commit terrorist attacks? Or is it better to keep them within our borders, in even smaller borders, in prison, where they can never escape and actually plan things like that? It's a genuinely fair question, and it's one that the right wing have been having chats about for literally decades. I don't know why all of a sudden Farage making the point that that is actually a debate we've had before is a ridiculous thing to say, because, like most things, debates are never really put to bed. Especially when it comes to contemporary events like this. Things change all the time. The reason we didn't say, oh yeah, let's actually keep them in prison here in the first place is because the Assad regime was keeping them all in prison forever. Well, that's fallen now. That's why the questions come up again. Totally reasonable. Guess what? Everyone's still on the side of keep them out, though. But you need an answer to the question of what if they prepare a terrorist cell to attack Europe or Britain, God forbid? You know, you need an answer for that realistically.
It's very difficult for us to think we should take back people, Shamima Begum and others, and instinctively, it's not something I want to do.
And this is pretty much what, you know, Laurence Fox, Robert Jenrick, all those, that's pretty much what they all said. Oh, and instinctively, I don't want to do this. Like, you know, take out instinctively. I don't want to do this. We're not doing it. There you go. Farage has just said it there. Oh, what does he say next? Does he have a but?
Gorka argues that if we and other European countries don't take back these people and put them in prison here, they will get out of prison under the new Syrian regime, leading to a problem that in the end, we may all have to fight.
And it could destabilise Syria.
It could well, I'm not even sure Syria's stable, but so...
No, he doesn't have a but. He just says, here's Gorka's argument. It's amazing. People are saying that he's sitting on a fence. He's not at all. The whole point of this clip is Farage answering the question, no, we are not going to bring her back. Gorka's making a fair point, though. We should probably have an answer for it. It's just unbelievable that this is how it's gone.
As I say, my instinctive reaction is to say, no, we don't want these people. But if Gorka's right, if there's a real risk that thousands of these people get out of prison and start causing mayhem, maybe he's got a point.
You think it's...
And this is the other point. This is no longer about Shamima Begum. It's not about Shamima Begum at this point. It's moved on from her. ITV bring her up because she is obviously the highest profile case, but not every case is like hers. And all he said, yet again, is Gorka may have a point, we need an answer for it. That's all he said. There's nothing unreasonable about this.
something the UK should consider, bringing back Shamima Begum?
I've never wanted to. I've instinctively never wanted to. and I'm now thoughtful. I'm thoughtful. I mean, I don't classify her as an all-out ISIS killer. So she's sort of she is a lesser part of the equation.
But do you think the UK government should listen to this? Do you think they should be considering bringing back some of these ISIS supporters back to the UK?
So again, just to make clear what Farage is saying there, Shamima Begum isn't actually a full-blown terrorist. She's not, well, as far as we're aware, she's not actually killed, say, any Western European or American civilian or soldier. That's basically all he's saying there. But then already the ITV interviewer is moving on to try and now expand the question from Shamima Begum to, oh, well, should any of them be brought back then? Again, just to make it clear, this conversation moved on from Shamima Begum at this point. But nobody's appreciating that, because even the ITV article didn't make this clear, to be quite honest with you. This full clip has actually changed my opinion. I don't really think he's done much wrong here. Every time when he's directly asked, should we bring people back, it's a straight no. The clarification is, but Gorka may have a point. We either have an answer to that or we rethink our position, including mine. That is all he's saying. And again, a good enough answer is to say, and Farage probably should have said this is a fine criticism, he should have said, I think it's good enough to say she doesn't have British citizenship, therefore she's not our problem. I agree with you that he should have said that, but as we can see from the clip, the ITV man has already moved on to widening the net.
I think what Gorka has done is started a debate, not one that I wanted to have, and not one the British government wanted to have, but now we're going to have to.
And he's got a point.
Regrettably, yes.
Again, there's no, yes, we probably should bring them back. It's just, well, a debate's going on now. And Gorka probably has a point. Again, we need an answer to it. I could say it forever and ever and ever. Point being is that at this point, ITV has posted their own community note effectively to say they're fake news. So I hope that this video has cleared things up. No, Nigel Farage does not want Shamima Begum back. It would be ridiculous for anyone to say that even before he made the clarification. Yet, again, people are just taking mainstream media lies and running with them because it attacks Nigel Farage. If we keep having this on the right wing, you know, we're going to have to kick you guys out forever, frankly. You're not useful people. You have absolutely no impulse control whatsoever. You just see some negative story about Farage and you run with it. Why? I don't know. Maybe it's because he's useful and you're envious. I have no idea. I don't really care to psychologise it. Stop doing it. You look moronic. There's criticisms you can well and truly levy at the guy. He's not perfect. He's not God. I've criticised him myself. Just keep it sensible. Unlike my Artusi, because we're into that section of the video now. What the actual F? No, she's no longer a citizen of this United Kingdom. Yes, that is also Farage's position, as we have gone through. In fact, all it took was a small search in his timeline on Twitter, and you find that his previous comments are all, yes, coinciding with what I'm saying. Here's an example from a couple of years ago. If Shamima Begum had been given citizenship, it would have opened the door to dozens more and be a genuine threat to our security. The BBC must be so disappointed. Again, this is his position. It's always been his position. It's not changed. He just realises that if you want to argue against Gorka and, frankly, what is probably going to be the Trump administration, you better have good answers. It's basically all he said. Anyway, Tusi, after it was pointed out this was fake news, decided to bite back, saying Reform UK proxies are panicking tonight as they are asking their supporters to defend Nigel. They didn't need to ask people like me to defend Nigel. We can smell a rat a mile off. And claim he didn't say it's now time to have a debate around Shamima Begum's return, as she apparently is no longer a threat. My Artusi has run with the ITV headline and decided to just make up more lies. When did Nigel Farage say that she is not a threat? He said she is a lower part of the equation. That still means she's a threat, just not as much as actual terrorists. And my Artusi's here completely misrepresenting him, which I'm honestly quite surprised at. I always thought my Artusi was a little bit more sensible than this, but as we'll go through, I think there's reasons why all these people are frankly lying about Farage. Because he goes on trying to report this story, and again, the reporting isn't great. Reform Chairman Zahir Yousaf confirms that Nigel Farage, while initially reluctant about Shamima Begum's return to Britain, now sees things differently. He argues with change in Syria, it's better to have individuals like Shamima in British prisons. No, that is not what they argued. They are still on the side she and other ISIS terrorists should not come back. The point is that you cannot just dismiss that there is no point or debate around this entire issue. They are still on the side, as they made very clear painfully clear, I would say, that they do not want her back. And here Toosey is yet again completely obfuscating the position. Terrible work, honestly. But he just carries on with it. Farage is now gaslighting the British public. The debate isn't about whether Nigel personally loves her return? Okay, bit of a weird sentence. The debate is about him saying the UK now needs to consider the option due to changes in Syria, which again isn't what he said. It's effectively a debate against Gawker and the point he made, because the point has legs. How do I know it has legs? We were all talking about this 10 years ago. He said, I instinctively never wanted to, but I'm now thoughtful. I don't classify her as ISIS, an all-out ISIS killer. Yes, she's not an ISIS killer. She was an enforcer. She was bad. She was a threat to our national security, as he said. But, you know, she's DEFCON 3 rather than DEFCON 5. And, again, still thinks she shouldn't come back. His party chairman, Zaya Yusuf, also confirmed this on GB News at 9 PM. Again, there's no considering. It's, oh, he started a debate. You know, Farage is saying we need to consider what our debate is because we better have a good reason for keeping them out there. Should they actually make terrorist insurgent cells and cause terrorist attacks over in Britain and other European countries again? Because if it does turn out that actually Gawker was correct, we're going to have egg on our faces, people. That's just true. This was after Farage backed Gawker's argument that it's better to have these people in our prisons than in Syria. He didn't back it, he said he had a point. That's a completely different situation. That's a completely different reality. Nigel said, but now we're going to have the debate. Well, yeah, Gawker was threatening the special relationship over it, so you better engage it seriously, otherwise you're just taking a pointless risk. You can go into a debate, again, only having one side of it, saying we need a debate on it, by the way, I'm on this side, is perfectly reasonable, and what Nigel Farage said. Stop misrepresenting people, Toosey, this is really weird behaviour. He then just kept this attack up pretty much all night. Definition of woke right. Farages who deny he said what he said on national TV when people can watch the interview with their own eyes. You're the one that misrepresented him, sir. He then goes on to cope to say this is not just people running with the ITV headline. The context of the interview is the problem. What Farage said in the interview is the problem, not the headline. Then why aren't you representing what he said in the interview properly? Faragists are only attacking the headline. The full interview is much worse. No, it isn't. Why are you lying? Anyway, then Toosey does the completely moronic thing of actually trying to say, here is the truth, and then lie when you can literally check that he's lying in the same tweet. Here is the truth. Farage did say this in fact, despite him now denying it, saying, do you think the UK should consider bringing back Shamima Begum? I've never wanted to, but now I'm thoughtful. Again, that is not him saying he should think that we should bring Shamima Begum back. That is him effectively saying, I was resting on my laurels. We really need to come up with better arguments to keep her out. Because at the end of the day, if you don't actually make good arguments for why you are doing something, how can you defend it? That's all Farage is saying here. It's not difficult, and there's good reasons to keep her out. You know, maybe Farage should have had them at his fingertips. Well, he didn't. Who does? The best we could come up with is she no longer has the citizenship, which again, with how fast-paced the interview went, as I went through before, he was cut off in the middle of talking about Shamima Begum. God knows where he's going to go with it, but clearly he doesn't want her back. Even though personally I wouldn't love her to come, we now need to consider it. No, we shouldn't. Again, just not what he said. What did he say? Instinctively, I don't want to do it. However, Gawker has brought up some good points. We should probably counter them. Otherwise, how can we hold the position? That's all that was said. Why are you lying, Toosey? Anyway, the last tweet in this section. Toosey finally says, Faragists will prevent reform from becoming successful as they see reform as Farage. If you criticise Farage, they say you're attacking reform. Well, only if you lie about him, which you did all evening. Parties should be above their leader. Should they? Like, the leader, the whole point of the leader is that they are captaining the ship that is the party. It's so weird. There's so many people complaining, oh, reform isn't democratised properly, or how you're supposed to get rid of Farage. Why are we talking about a mutiny while we have the most successful right-wing party pretty much ever in Britain at the moment, at least post-World War II? Like, it's crazy. It's open talk of mutiny, and they're complaining that they can't properly mutineer reform. Like, of course you can't. Why would they let you do that? You need to convince 90,000 people that Farage is not the man. Well, guess what? 180,000 people, or, well, maybe not all of them, because I've seen people join it for nefarious reasons, but the vast majority of them joined Reform under the impression that Farage would be the leader for at least the next 5 years. Do you think you're really going to convince these people that we should kick him out? Most of them won't even have heard of Rupert Lowe, for God's sake. And again, he hides behind this, oh, just allow us to criticise him. We're just criticising him, bro. No, you're lying about him. Talking complete guff about him. And it's not acceptable. We're supposed to be better than this. But no, here you are, being the dirty, dirty smear merchants that you constantly say you're against. You've just taken the lie and run with it. And I'm about to go into my theory as to why. So why are all these people bashing Farage, and some of them going even further and just outright lying about him for 4 hours straight? Effectively, I think this all frankly comes down to Tommy Robinson, because there's one thing that pretty much everyone I went through has in common, and that's that they have some sort of contact with Tommy Robinson, and in some cases even, Tommy Robinson has given them support and a platform at his own protests. Now, what this act of goodwill does is get all these people on side and get them to effectively trust Tommy, so when he's going around saying I've been silenced by the state for my work on grooming gangs, which is total nonsense by the way, but that's for another video, they end up effectively following his lead, and what Tommy Robinson's lead has been is, because Nigel Farage has attacked me, which frankly he has deserved, because he is not a good man. You know, you could go on about the work he's done to expose grooming gangs and all that in the past all you want. Fact of the matter is that over the past, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, you know, the stuff that actually matters when it comes to the upcoming elections, he's been quite largely useless. You know, most of the reason he's ended up in jail is far removed from stuff he's actually done with grooming gangs. His most recent bout in prison, by the way, which he pleaded guilty to, and he himself and his lawyers requested that he go into solitary confinement. Yes, probably for his own safety, but still, this whole story that it was to torture him is nonsense. But anyway, back to the point at hand. This gesture of goodwill where I will give you a platform to give you speeches on, I'll support you on Twitter and things like that, it creates this sort of loose network, an awful lot like the leftists actually, where they will effectively support each other and lift each other up. So effectively, now that a couple of them have tapped Farage, they're all going in on it. And it's quite hard for any of them to say, hang on, is what we're saying actually true? And as I said before, this is the difference between someone like Josh and all of these other people. Josh has realised, thanks to me pretty directly, that, oh, no, ITV are just lying about him. That's not what he said at all. He doesn't want Shamima Begum back. He's just having a reasonable position of, the US are making a point and making a debate about this. Perhaps if we're going to keep this position, we should have good points back. And again, it goes beyond Shamima Begum anyway, which is another point that nobody seems to be appreciating here. But anyway, you then get to Lawrence Fox, Maya Tusi, you know, Tommy Robinson and other people in that network, and that they are all together in this online right ecosystem that effectively relies on a few of these big hitters effectively directing where all the zeitgeist of the online right goes. And so because of that, as I said before, because they started attacking Farage, at first because, Tommy Robinson didn't do nothing, he's actually being silenced for his work on the grooming gang. Frankly, if you are losing that argument to Piers Morgan, you really should rethink your position. But anyway, again, besides the point, as I say, this is my working theory that this ecosystem that effectively has Tommy Robinson and a couple of other people at the top influence all these people to go in and attack these targets that they see as valid, and one that they've landed on is Nigel Farage. Why? Because he attacks Tommy Robinson, doesn't want him as any part of reform. And you know, when all that starts happening, they start saying, we just want you to appreciate that he's done some work to exposing some of the grooming gangs. And so Farage actually does that on a GB News segment.
Well, it's all about somebody who calls himself Tommy Robinson. He's a campaigner. He campaigns on grooming gangs and many other things. And fine, if he wants to be a campaigner, that's great.
I mean, yeah, he describes him at first as a political campaigner about the grooming gangs. He has said he's appreciated that Tommy Robinson has done his campaigning for the grooming gangs. I mean, you know, to be absolutely clear, I've cut the rest of that clip out where he goes on about Tommy Robinson's convictions and things like that. However, a lot of these people on the Tommy side were saying, we're not asking him to join reform or lead reform or anything like that. We're just saying we want you to appreciate his time working as a campaigner for the grooming gangs. Okay, well, he's just done it. What happens? We still attack him. Of course he's going to say screw you. I'm saying screw you. You weren't honest. You never were honest. You can't be honest with Tommy Robinson because, frankly, you've gulped up a load of his lies because, yeah, he's a very good campaigner who manages to get big groups of protesters out, you know, tens of thousands of people at a time. But unfortunately, it's a real red pill that people are just going to have to swallow at some point. Tommy Robinson is a dishonest actor. Not on grooming gangs, honestly. Vast majority of the stuff he said about grooming gangs, mostly true. But you've got to bear in mind, what's he in jail for at the moment? Because he was libeling a 14-year-old Syrian refugee. Just straight up lying about him. And getting witnesses on board who were lying about him too. This was all found in the court documents, and that's why he eventually pleaded guilty, because he had absolutely no defence. If your defence is, oh, it was the government just trying to bang him up, you're going to have to explain why he pleaded guilty then. Because that's just nonsense. And that's just on the most recent conviction. I mean, the man just has a laundry list of previous convictions. Are you seriously trying to tell me that his assault on a off-duty police officer, his use of a false passport to get into the US, his mortgage fraud conviction, which, to be fair, while he was in jail, he did get assaulted, and obviously that should not be happening. I'm totally fine with people saying he should not be put in prisons where there's a bunch of Muslim prisoners as well. That is absolutely reasonable. But anyway, and also his stalking charge, you know, along with the other ones I've not even mentioned. Are you seriously telling me that all of these charges are completely unjustified and just there because he was exposing the same grooming gangs that, guess what, a lot of people in local and even national media were exposing as well? Why is it just Tommy Robinson getting all this stuff when, frankly, he's not even the main person exposing this stuff anymore? Charlie Peters over on GB News, he is the leading man on exposing all this stuff now. You don't see him getting arrested for mortgage fraud and stalking. It's because the man actually did all this. But if you are the type of person that goes ahead and basically tries to say that it's either overblown or it's just the government tried to silence him, you get into this in-group and then you do and follow what he says, because then you're a good guy in the Tommy group and then you get supported by him, you get platformed by him and what have you. It's all a loose network and they all just follow incentives. But it's a ridiculous thing to try and be on that side of things because, as it turns out, it just turns you into a liar. And it's something common that I have seen for a while now, and it's about time that I actually say something about it, because an awful lot of the time I just kind of leave Tommy by the wayside. I don't really say much on him, because the positive stuff I have to say on him is really few and far between these days. But we're at a point where it is ending up causing people who should know better, frankly, to lie about the political party I'm an activist for, I am a member of, and that I want to see succeed. So it's about time that I actually start saying something about it, because this is all ridiculous stuff. And as I say, this is why I think people like my Artusi and Lawrence Fox are lying about Nigel Farage like this. So either they stop lying about him, or their complete nonsense is going to continually be pointed out by people. Choice is up to them, I guess, but they appear to have picked their side here, and I have to say, for my Artusi, I'm very disappointed. Lawrence Fox is mental, so I don't expect him to change. But it has got to stop, because you are coming across as total morons and completely useless people. But if you're willing to sell out to be, you know, up your status with the Tommy Brigade, so be it. I don't really care for that. He very well may have done good work in the past, but unfortunately it seems to be staying in the past. I have barely seen him do any good work for the past few years. And a few thousand extra subscribers and possibly quite a few super chats are not worth me ruining my own reputation and ruining my own, frankly, pride in my work just to get a few quid more, just to get a few followers more and into this network. I don't want to be in that network if it means I have to lie about people. But anyway, as I say, that is my working theory on this sort of thing, because the main reason I'm saying it is because after Elon Musk obviously goes on about Tommy Robinson and then says, oh, Nigel Farage ain't great, because by the way, there's a whole American network of people who simp for Tommy Robinson as well. Think Tim Pool, Cernovich, you know, these circles have roots to influence Elon Musk. This is why he ended up doing it, at least from what I can tell. And then obviously we have this British circle of people who were on the Tommy train as well. And as I have gone through in this video, especially with my Artusi, they are just willing to lie about Nigel Farage and the Reform Party to a point it just needs to be called out. Same with Ben Habib, by the way. A big reason I think he's going so hard on reform these days is because he's fully on board with the Tommy train, and I don't think it's a very good train to be on. And I think in a few years' time, a lot of people are going to be regretting doing it, because unless Tommy can actually do some good work in the next couple of years, I can't see how many people are going to see what he's doing as being redeemable. He can only ride the wave of I helped expose some grooming gangs for some time. That is not a wave that is going to last forever. But, well, I know that section is going to annoy quite a few people. I am willing to hear you out in the comments and what have you, but at the end of the day, I've been looking into Tommy's cases myself between doing videos and things like that. Don't like what I see. I do not like what I see at all. I'm talking court documents, direct accounts of people who have actually been on the Tommy Circle before, things like that. It's, you know, there are plenty of right-wing reasons to not like Tommy Robinson. That's all I'm saying here. But anyway, I think with that we can end the video here. So, right, shilling time. Next Tuesday, it is Tosh News. We'll have a panel on, discuss the news from the past 2 weeks and have a grand old time. Next Saturday, it's Laughing at the Guardian, so do come along to that for a fun time next Saturday. And then videos out as and when I can make them. You've even got a weekend video here that's nearly an hour long, so there you go. If you like what I do and want to support me, the easiest thing to do is subscribe and like the video, leave comments, all that good stuff. That is the easiest and freest way to support me, but if you think you want to be a bit more direct with your support, then you can obviously become a member, starting from £2 a month, or super chat and super thanks whenever I'm streaming, or down below in any of the comments of any of my videos. It's all good stuff and it helps the channel grow and keep going. But once again, I would like to thank you all very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.